This video is perfectly serviceable as a standalone product, but if you're in the least bit interested, I still would recommend watching my The Case for Malos in Smash video beforehand, because this is a sequel to that one, and I'll be responding to a criticism before I get into the Elma stuff. Plus, there's also going to be a two-part Rex-related sequel to this video, so there's kind of a continuity thing going on. If you just want to see the Elma stuff, as well as a couple Xenoblade as a whole related things, skip to the timestamp on screen now, and be warned for spoilers through the end of Xenoblade Chronicles X. With that out of the way, you might notice that the clips on screen are going to be a lot less related to what I'm talking about than they were in the Malos video. Normally I would just go back into my X file that I used for the Let's Play, play some stuff as Elma since I didn't do that in the LP, and then put the relevant clips on screen when I'm talking about different moves, but that would take time, and I want this video to come out before the delayed September Nintendo Direct, because I'm of the opinion that if Elma is in Ultimate in any capacity as a playable character, that is when she'll be revealed. I don't really think she's in, but I'd rather get a moveset speculation thing out beforehand just in case, because if she's revealed, why make a moveset speculation when I could just look at the move she already has, and I don't want this work to go to waste. So, now we'll move on to the biggest criticism the Malos video got. And that was, surprisingly, not that people didn't think he deserved a spot or that he'd be interesting. A lot of people were on board. I did say that I don't think Malos would be in unless another Xenoblade 2 character would be in, so that probably tempered some of that. Like, if Rex gets in, I definitely want Malos as a Shulk Echo. I'm still kind of on the fence as to whether or not I'd want him without an original Xenoblade 2 character, but that's beside the point. The big criticism I got was that I made so many suggested changes that they basically turned Malos into a semi-clone of Shulk, basically to the effect of Luigi, instead of something that would be simple enough changes to be an Echo Fighter. So, retroactively, I'd suggest you think of that video as a pool of suggestions for how you could change Malos up to make him a Shulk Echo, take however many of those alterations you want, not all of them, and just craft a somewhat easier to make, more plausible Echo out of that. If it were up to me, the changes I would make would just be to his specials, maybe remove the sweet spot, but that's besides the point. Give him the 3 different Monado arts I suggested, give him Ike's side B or a modified backslash and just call it Striker Edge, and give him a somewhat windboxier version of Link's up B, maybe based on one of the customs from Smash 4, and just call it Monado Cyclone. There, Malos is his pure Echo, so we can hope for 2 original fighters in Elma and Rex with some version of the Aegis. So, now, this is where the timestamp's going to redirect you to. I know I said that there was going to be Elma stuff, but I'm going to go over changes that I would make to the way Xenoblade is represented as a whole before we talk about Elma, because some of this stuff is relevant. The first thing is, I would definitely change the series icon from the little icon of the Monado to this X. Now, it might seem kind of stupid because the Monado is the most iconic symbol in the series, but it's still only representative of one game. Now, a lot of people do prefer 1 to both X and 2, and a lot of people prefer 1 to X and 2 combined, but that doesn't mean that I want the representation in Smash to only reflect the fan favorite. The X is the X in the Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade 2 logo, as well as the preliminary X logo, and the entire logo for X back when it was just called Project X. So, that in and of itself, a bit more representative of the entire Xenoblade series, but it's also the X from the Xenogears title. I would be very surprised if they didn't try to shoehorn like Cosmos or something from Xenosaga in, but I just want the X there as a symbol representing Xeno as a whole, and just how far it's come. It means more as a symbol than just something from the one Xeno game that was never originally intended to be a Xeno game. At least changing it to the X. X and 2 were designed to fall under the Xeno archetypes and that kind of thing. That's why 1 is the furthest removed from that stuff. So, I don't know, that just makes more logical sense to me. Obviously, we've already seen that isn't the case unless Sakurai's trying to trick us here, and then once Elma comes out, she'll have a different thing, or whatever, I don't know. This modified Helvetica X is what I changed the series symbol to. I would also do something with the victory themes. Now, obviously, this only goes along with the idea that characters from games other than the first one would be added as playable, of course, because the little snippet of You Will Know Our Names is perfectly fine for Shulk. I would have probably preferred his victory theme to be some version of, like, the area discover jingle, like an actual little jingle from the game, but that doesn't really constitute a victory in battle, so I can leave that as is. For Malos and any other Xenoblade 2 reps, I would definitely make the victory theme Hunting Successful, or the little ditty that plays whenever you successfully kill a unique monster. It's the only actual victory theme in the Xenoblade series, so obviously it makes sense to have there. We've seen different characters from the same series have different victory themes in the past. It doesn't seem like every character is going to get a unique theme in Ultimate as much as I'd like that to happen, but we have seen that King K. Rool gets his own theme, so they are going to be adding new ones for existing series, which means that giving Malos and whoever else from 2 is in there a unique one makes sense. As for Elma's, I don't really know. I'm thinking maybe either part of Mono X, X's main theme, or a segment from Uncontrollable similar to the segment from You Will Know Our Names that was used for Shulk. But 6 minutes into the video, we can finally actually start talking about Elma. It's definitely X's relatively lackluster sales and not Elma's potential to be a very unique fighter that make me think she doesn't have a big chance of getting in. No one in the existing cast, and no one among the fan favorites or general likely picks can come close to replicating her combined dual sword and dual gun fighting style. Yeah, Bayonetta does come kinda close to the gun side, and there are gonna be a few similarities between Elma moves I came up with and Bayonetta's moves, but literally no one uses primarily dual blades as a source of attacks, so hey, that's pretty cool. Probably even more importantly though, no one in the game has a gimmick relying around swapping weapons and using different attacks based on what you have equipped. Of course, Elma could do this because that's a big part of X. Every class in the game can use a melee weapon and a ranged weapon, and you have different arts that use each weapon. I am going to be making one stipulation though, and that is that you can't do something you can do in X, which is being able to use an art for the weapon you don't have equipped when you have another weapon equipped. So basically, in X, Elma could use a dual sword art when she had her dual guns firing, and she'd automatically switch to the swords and start auto-attacking with those. The way I imagine her weapon gimmick working, you actually have to use her neutral special in order to swap between weapons, and that would have an animation and you wouldn't get the swap if you got knocked out of it. So you can't just swap between different weapons willy-nilly, you can't combine attacks from different ones unless you somehow get them in a really large amount of hits done, or it's like a team combo or something. I'm not taking competitive viability or balance into account, but I'm pretty sure you need to have some sort of weakness like that in order to not make her weapon switching gimmick completely OP. Additionally, I'm sure you could make an equally viable moveset based around gaining TP and then using it up in order to unleash a more powerful version of a special or some sort of stronger attack in general, like Cloud's Limit, but I like my weapon switching gimmick, so I'm only going to be talking about this one idea now. I don't really like the idea of the weapon switch giving her access to 2 completely separate movesets that are only tied together via the neutral B, so I'm thinking that her jab and all her tilts are the same animations and do the exact same thing regardless of which weapon you equipped, but the way the animations look are done in a specific way where it could be interpreted either as her slashing you with a sword or her pistol whipping you with a gun, so it still makes sense for that attack to cause damage. Her jab would probably be a 1 to 2 hit combo of a punch chaining into some sort of cross-slashy thing that looks like her auto-attack animation with the dual swords. I'm thinking that the guns she has would be a variation of the dual guns with blades on them, so it would sort of make sense for her to be able to cut you with them and that kind of thing. As for her aerials, the damage and knockback ratios would be the same no matter what weapon she had, but the sword versions would be faster with less range, and the gun versions would be longer range, but have a lot more startup and end lag, so just a bit of a trade-off there. As for her smash attacks, I'm thinking that this is where you could use a lot of her arts that I didn't make into specials, and yeah, I did use 8 already, but that does still leave 8 arts that aren't really accounted for. Granted, a lot of those are status moves, so they probably wouldn't work very well as smash attacks, but you could probably work at least one or two in there, like how Slit Edge is Shulk's forward smash. The sword versions of her smashes, I'm imagining, are similar to sword characters with relatively shorter swords, so closer to your Lynx or your Marths, as compared to, say, Shulk or Ike. Obviously, she has two swords, so they hit 2 times. Probably the second hit is the stronger one or whatever, and you can SDI out of the first one. Something like that. I don't know. The gun versions would be probably something similar to either Duck Hunt or Me Gunner, maybe something Samusy, where she charges up a gun thing, then lashes out, shoots it out. It's a big multi-hit thing with relatively large range. Probably laggier than the sword versions just because of the range thing. Last hit does more knockback, but multi-hits means you can SDI out of it even easier. Something like that. But that's not the bread and butter. I think what you're most interested in here is the specials. Basically, for each input type and each weapon, Elma has a different special, each of which is an art she can use with that weapon type, so she's got 8 arts she can use, which, hey, coincidentally enough, that's a full arts palette in X. I didn't even plan it that way, but just because Smash has 4 specials, it kind of works out that way. Also, the 2 arts tied to a specific input are at least superficially similar. They do something specific that only those 2 specials do, and none of her others do. None of them are just carbon copies of each other, but with a different weapon copy pasted in. They're just somewhat similar. In fact, the 2 that are most similar to each other are her 2 neutral bees, which both serve the effect of swapping between weapons and performing an art that grants a temporary buff. Like I said before, the swap animation does have to take time, so it's not busted and you can't do it mid-combo to abuse that. If you're going from sword to gun, she will use Primer, which in X would grant Elma critical power. Critical power is a buff that basically means your critical hits will do more damage as long as the buff lasts. Obviously, crits aren't a thing in Smash outside of some Fire Emblem Final Smashes, so it's gonna have to do something different. What I'm thinking of, it increases the power of the next smash or special Elma uses, as in, the next unique attack she has that uses the gun. I'm gonna just say by 25% to both damage and knockback so it doesn't get crazy out of hand, and this does mean the next attack used, not the next one to hit. So if you want to take advantage of this buff, you actually have to make sure your next gun hit will land. That's probably going to make avoiding getting slammed by really powerful attacks with it a bit easier for someone fighting against her, so just a bit more tactical stuff. And the buff is also, of course, cancelled out if you swap back to sword before you use anything. If you swap from gun to sword, she will use Thirsty Edge. And the cool thing about this is, I can actually just directly transplant the effect of Thirsty Edge from X straight into Smash. Thirsty Edge is an aura, which basically gives the character a specific special effect for a certain amount of time, and this aura causes her to drain HP with melee attacks for a certain period of time that gets bigger as you level up the art. Obviously, it's not going to last for something crazy like 30 seconds, but I'm imagining that sword attacks, as in, again, smashes and specials, will recover health when you land them for a few seconds, probably like 5, and again, a very small recovery, probably less than 10% damage dealt, just like with Malos' Monado Eater that I was talking about in the previous video. Moving on to side B, these 2 arts are basically attacks, but they also have a special way to deal increased damage. For gun, you're obviously going to go with Sliding Slinger. If you see the animation in either X or 2, you know that it's perfect for a Slide B. I said Slide B. That is a great Freudian slip, and I'm keeping that in the video because it actually makes sense. Elma just slides on the ground, she fires up, and the gun does damage. It deals increased damage if you're attacking from the side in X, so I'm thinking of something somewhat similar to Bayo's side B in animation and duration-wise, but obviously you can fall off the stage, because that's the big thing. AI Elma is really suicidal. She's sliding slingers off of every cliff in the game if you're fighting near it. But instead of dealing extra damage from the side, because Smash is a 2D game, you're always attacking from the front or back, it does extra damage on enemies in the air. And by that I mean only the bullets, not Elma's body herself. It'll have a hitbox and it'll do damage, but only the bullets get the air damage boost. So the idea is for throws to combo into Sliding Slinger very well. Her sword side B is Shadow Strike. Mainly because it's one of her signature arts, as in ones that only Elma and the Avatar can learn, and the Avatar can only get access to them by completing a quest related to Elma. So I wanted to get both of her signature arts in there. There are probably a couple other things you could use instead of Shadow Strike, but I'm thinking just cloning Shulk's / leap attack, which is increased vertical mobility, decreased horizontal mobility, less startup lag and more end lag when compared to regular /, but with a different animation, more mimicking Elma's Shadow Strike one, which is very different from Shulk's /, and probably tooling around the damage and knockback ratios to better suit the rest of Elma's moves. Both of her up Bs are recovery / attack, so they help at getting back to the stage, but they do also do damage, which is kind of necessary because I realized only right now that I didn't really design Elma at being very good at recovering, because if you sliding slinger mid-air, you're gonna go down. You can sliding slinger off stage, you could double jump back, but neither of her up Bs are particularly good as recoveries, so I guess that would make her probably a heavy for a Xenoblade character. Heavier than Shulk and or Malos, I guess, which kind of goes in with the whole Mimiazome thing, and maybe her alien race is heavy. This is what I put this X spoiler warning on for. I don't know. Figured I had to use the spoiler warning in some way. But her gun up B is Violent Streak. The versions in both X and 2 are completely grounded, but they do involve her spinning around and firing her guns off in different directions. So in order to make this at least something as a recovery, I decided to add a damaging leap upwards, as in, if she hits you on the way up, you'll get hit, before spinning around with the guns at the top of the jump, and then going into a very controllable special fall, as in, it's easy to move yourself left and right in it, but you also did a purely vertical recovery, and are probably going to have to recover above the stage to get back, so you're probably going to get edge-guarded pretty badly. I'm also imagining that if you catch an enemy with the jump up from the bottom, as in, if you get the enemy right when the jumping up hitbox goes into effect, they will be dragged up with you and automatically comboed into the first gunshot, which I'm thinking that that specific shot would do much more knockback with the rest, so it's a viable combo ender and kill move. Her sword up B is Stream Edge, and if you've only played one, I'm sure you're really confused because, yeah, Elma does get Stream Edge, but the X version is very different and involves spinning around, so it would actually sort of make sense as a recovery move. Elma spins around 3 or 4 times slashing forwards, and there are more damaging hitboxes in front of Elma. In X, Stream Edge only does damage in front of the character using it, but I decided to have a weaker hitbox behind Elma in this case, just because it's there. It might help with something, I don't know. I'm thinking of it being at a set trajectory up and forwards at about a 60-degree angle, probably going into the same special fall, because this is still a pretty dinky recovery, but at least you can recover under the stage with this. I don't know. Stream Edge does deal increased damage in a ranged combo when used in the original game, but again, since you can't combo gun arts into sword arts here, I'm just going to ignore it. Both of her down specials are connected in that they're very unique. They're not like any other Smash specials that really exist. The gun one more so, but the sword one's up there as well. The gun one is Ghost Factory, and believe me, I would have used Ghost Walker instead were Factory not Elma's second signature art. Obviously, Ghost Walker is more useful, more used, and far more iconic to fans of X, but I just felt dirty not using Elma's second signature art, especially after it became one of her signature moves in her fights in 2. In X, both Ghost Walker and Ghost Factory grant the decoy status, which is pretty much the most broken buff in all of X. What it does is, any character who has it is guaranteed to avoid the next X amount of attacks that hit them, the X of course depending on how strong the buff was. Obviously, if you can keep spamming your decoy art before it runs out, you're just never going to get hit, so that's kind of busted. So, what if we kind of go along the thing of an evasion type ability being turned into a counter in Smash like Shulk's Vision and Malos' Foresight? I'm thinking of Ghost Factory as a very different counter from pretty much any other ones before it. Obviously, it goes into effect the same way, and the animation is her making the 3 clones, like she does in her fights in 2, I just like this version, or this interpretation of Ghost Factory, better than the one we got in X where it's just after images. So instead of automatically attacking back, the character who got countered can actually still move around and do things for a little bit, probably only a couple seconds. However, if they don't do anything, they're going to get hit back by all 4 clones, which would be the most powerful counter in any Smash game. However, they can continue to attack Elma, doing no damage, but decreasing the decoy counter and eventually decreasing the number of clones. The more clones you get rid of, the less damage the counter does. And if you actually destroy all 3 clones and keep hitting Elma, you'll be able to hit her out of it before she can hit you at all. And yeah, a just Elma version with no clones is going to be the weakest counter in all of Smash. Probably a 2 clone would be a bit weaker than, like, say, a Fire Emblem counter, whereas a 3 clone would be above Fire Emblem, but less than, say, Shulk or Corrin. Yeah, I know Corrin's Fire Emblem. Just think Marth, Ike, Lucina, Chrom, Roy. All of those guys with counters. And just have it do something like that. There are obviously a lot of kinks in how that would actually work mechanically, but I really like this idea and the fact that you actually have to hit Elma out of the decoy in order to damage her before she can strike back with the invulnerability. A little less interesting, though, is her sword down B, which is Electric Surge. This is a sort of projectile-y sword ability in X that does more damage the lower Elma's HP is. So my idea is, it shoots an electric pulse straight forwards, not going on the ground, just straight forwards, like that one custom version of the fireball for the Mario characters where it just goes straight, but it doesn't do much damage. The swords, when she slashes to make the pulse come out, do damage as well, and getting hit with the pulse gives a similar effect to Arc Thunder. Both damage and knockback from the pulse and the swords increase as Elma's percent rises. If you're at 999, it's basically going to be an insta-kill, so stay away from Elma in sudden death, I guess. I don't know. And that's all her specials. As for alts, if you want to go down the really ambitious route, you could just straight up give her different sets of armor in X for every alt and just have it work like that. Maybe even give her different swords and guns for each one. That would be really cool. But honestly, I'm probably just thinking a similar thing to what they did with Shulk, where each of her alternate costumes is just a reference to a different female character in X. Obviously, Shulk just referenced all the party members in one, but there are so many where you might as well just go with the female ones, and maybe have a swimsuit one. If you really want to go down the spoiler route, have a true form Elma one too. That might be kind of cool. But other than that, that's basically it. I'd also love to see an X-themed stage with X music, obviously of Uncontrollable. Not really sure what I'd choose for the stage, because Primordia is kind of generic and might be seen as too similar to the Gower Plains stage. Not really sure. But before we go, I want to talk about Final Smash. If this were still Smash 4 speculation, I would without a doubt have given her Overdrive. Basically, have it work somewhat similar to the way Overdrive works in 2, where it's just a thing that happens and the more hits you land, the higher the counter gets. The Smash version of Overdrive would be somewhat similar to that one mode in Project M where it released the shackles, as a certain character from 1 would say, and let you cancel every move into everything else. So it wouldn't even speed Elma up or anything, it's just you can cancel everything into everything. That's the only way to really chain sword and gun combos together, and that increases the Overdrive counter, which basically increases damage and knockback while temporarily decreasing damage taken. Of course, that's technically a transformation Final Smash, and those are handled very, very differently in Smash Ultimate compared to previous games, so I would instead give her a Skell. You could give her the one that she's always shown using in promotional art, but I think I would personally prefer her hopping in a good old Ares 90 and giving the enemies in a Goss or a cannon to remember. So, that's all I have for my concept of how Elma would work as a Smash fighter. Obviously, you can comment on your own ideas. If you want to go down the TP gaming route I suggested, do that. Or if you have others, just that works too. Look forward to the 2-part Rex video. One about just him, one about him where he could also have Adam as an Echo. And I'll see you guys next video. Thank you for making it this far, and until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.